All right, so it's being streamed now, and I just want to welcome everybody again. Thank you for being here. This is really exciting. It's not often that we get to have somebody presenting live from Europe, which means that it's like 3 in the morning over there. So thank you, Cavalher, for staying up really late tonight.
We're getting up very early.
Cavalher is a consciousness designer, mind hacker, visionary author, destroyer of illusions, and he is passionate about transposing limits. He has written a wonderful book. Let me see if I can hold it up to the owl here, called Paradigm of Sense. And I believe he's going to be talking about some of the things in this book today. It's a guide to consciousness of the fifth dimension, which will involve a pretty hefty dose of C.G. Jung. So without further ado, I'm going to just give it over to him because I'm really excited to hear what he has to say. And if you want more information about him, about the work he does, the book, his website is cavalher.com. Take it away.
Well, everybody welcome here. This, for me, it's night. For you, it's probably afternoon or evening. I would like to thank very much the Monterey Friends of Jung for having me here, and particularly Lisa Marowski, because she saw me, and we Jungians know how the self wants to be seen and how there is this enormous power of that sprouts out of being seen, how this develops new parts of our beings. So thank you very much for that and for the opportunity here. And thank you all for being here, listening and sharing your own experiences. I am excited to hear your views and opinion in our discussion time. Well, Lisa has introduced me. Thank you, Lisa. I would like to add that I work using dreams and the images present in dreams to help people to realize what they envision for their lives, careers, and businesses, according to what makes sense to them and to those around them. I have been doing this for 23 years. And 13 years ago, I had a huge shift inside myself that made me see a new reality, which I came to call the paradigm of sense. I observed things and tested things for 13 years. And in 2018, I published the original Portuguese version of this book. And now in 2020, during the pandemic time, I published the English version that was translated by Fabiola Conceição. Thank you very much, Fabiola, for doing that. And the paradigm of sense is enormous. It is oriented towards a very specific part of a very specific stage of consciousness development. It is a natural stage of consciousness development. Everybody reaches this stage at some point. But yes, it is a very advanced stage, a superior type of consciousness, a powerful one, and it is compatible, or it is what the alchemists call the unus mundus, the third coniunctio, the third stage of the alchemical work. But in order to get to that place, we need to go through the previous stages, or else it would be too big of a leap to make. So I would like to invite you this evening to to do something very difficult in our culture, that is admitting that yes, we can be successful in our spiritual quest, in our consciousness development, in our psychological development. And this is a difficult thing to do because we are advised, and this is not without wisdom, that modesty is something that we should seek, and I agree with that. We all here know the dangers of inflation. So modesty, yes, is very important, but it should not be something that limits us in our quest of development and consciousness. So Jung proposes a very difficult, a very complex goal, that is to integrate the archetypes and ultimately integrate the archetype of the self. And that means to become the self. And because of our culture, I sense a tendency to believe that this is possible but never accomplish it. And my invitation for you today is to admit that yes, we can do that. After all, if this was not possible, then I don't think we should lose time attempting to do it. I would like to start in our 3D world, where most of people inhabit. And I don't mean that in the physical sense, but in the psychological sense. And although this is the world of the majority, there is not much to say about it, because we are here to look at a very specific part of the worldview proposed by the paradigm of sense, that is the work with images and how images behave in each one of the 3 stages defined by the alchemists. And in this 3D world, we are before these 3 stages, because you see, alchemy starts already at an advanced point. Alchemy starts after you have become successful as an eagle. So you must have had an eagle before, and you must have gone through a huge disappointment that Jung calls the moral defeat in order to start the alchemical process. But there is a 3D world before that, this common reality that all of us know, where the images that we see are material and outside of us. So there is no inner reality, there is just outer reality. And in this world, only rationality counts. We admit the existence of other things like feelings and emotions and physical sensations, but we don't think that these things are reliable. They are often seen as disturbances, and only rationality is reliable, and we are always looking for reasons for things. And in this world, dreams are just dreams, weird things that happen during the night and we should not pay attention to. But this reality is not the reality that we are trying to focus on here today. We are going to start seeing what the alchemists call the first stage, or the unio mentalis stage, the union of the mind. So what happens there? Well, first of all, I like to see the unconscious mind as a 4th dimension that is behind our 3D world, a sort of a backstage of reality, where things are happening, but we don't quite see them because, after all, they are unconscious. And despite what I see many spiritualists saying, the things they're saying today, the unconscious is unconscious. So in simple terms, unconscious means you do not know. And if you do not know, the things are happening here in a region you don't see, but they're happening. And you start to see this thing when the impossible starts to happen, the impossible from the perspective of rationality, from the perspective of the rational mind. And what I mean by impossible is the repetition of events. So we, at some point in our development, we start to see that we always attract the same kind of people, the kind of people that we often hate. We pay more attention to the people that we hate than to the people that we like sometimes. But not only people, we also start to pay attention to the fact that the same situation, the same boring or irritating situation keeps happening again and again. And often we see that our behaviors are also irritating for ourselves. For example, being nervous when we are going to talk publicly, or reacting with anger, uncontrolled anger, when we would prefer to be calm, or shutting our attention down in some situations. So even some of our behaviors are out of our control. And the fact that these things keep happening the same way every time, at some point calls our attention.
On the streaming platform.
I don't know if you wanted to ask something, but I'll keep going. So the fact that this irrational repetition keeps happening and irritating us, this breaks rationality down. This breaks the mind down. And it's very important that this happens, because this is the time when we start to think things like, there must be something happening inside of me that is causing these things to happen. I start to realize that I must be causing these things in a way that I don't understand, because I keep attracting these people. I don't want to attract them, but they keep coming to my life. I would prefer them to go, but they keep coming. The same thing happens to situations. The same thing happens to our behaviors. And when we start to ask ourselves this kind of question, then reality stopped being only material and started to be psychological. So now we start to recognize reality as a psychological reality, because what is causing reality to happen is something that is psychological, something that is inside of us. And this something is actually an image that we see. So one of the sentences I like the most in the paradigm of sense is that the universe is built on images, or the reality, the whole of reality, regardless of your level of consciousness, regardless of the stage you are in your development, the reality is built on images. First, the material images of the material world, but then at this point, the psychological images inside your psychological reality. So maybe the most common concept we do know is the concept of projection. This is an already ancient concept. It was created by Freud around the year 1900. So over 120 years ago, he was already speaking about projection. It's the common fact that we see in other people things that we cannot admit in ourselves. And it's interesting that we see in other people what we cannot see in ourselves. So we are talking about an image here. The image of being someone angry, the image of being someone gay, the image of being a woman, the image of being someone who we very often disregard, because projections are very often the vision of something that we disregard in other people. Because if we liked this particular thing, we would probably be this thing ourselves. But the fact is that we see some image in other people. This is a known fact. And it's not only projections, but also our identities are things that we see. So I see myself as blank, complete the sentence. It's a way of seeing yourself that constitutes your identity. And if you start to see yourself differently, then you start to have another identity. Also, we very often say express the idea that we see things in such and such way. I see the situation this way or that way. And the way we see the situation influences how we experience the situation, how we behave, and therefore how the situation behaves back, or the people involved in the situation behave back. So as we can see up to now, it's all about the way you see things, or the images you see in yourself, the images that you see in other people, the images that you see in situations. Therefore, the images are omnipresent in our reality, and now we are looking at our psychological reality. But there is a very sophisticated type of image that we call dreams. And maybe the dreams are the most sophisticated type of image that I know. And this is a good point to say that I am not, when I say image, I am not only talking about something that is visual. Yes, it is also visual, but beyond being visual, it is also something you can hear, something you can touch, something you can experience, the context, subtleties about your experience. So the whole of your experience is an image. And this is what happens in dreams, because when you are in a dream, you see things, but you also hear things, you can touch things, you have physical sensations, you have memories inside dreams, you experience things there. So it's a complete environment. And dreams are interesting things because they make you abandon rationality, abandon the exactness of rationality, of the mechanisms of cause and effect in favor of subjectivity. And because the dreams have this property, they are able to submerge you in new realities. Because you see, the dreams are a tool that the unconscious mind uses to do something that is very difficult to imagine. That is, you need to learn, you need to get to know something that is unconscious. You need to get to know something that you do not know. And it's difficult, in my opinion, it's not difficult. It is impossible to know something because someone said so to you, because someone explained this to you. So, for example, imagining the situation of you never having experienced pain or an orgasm, and then you read about it, or someone tells you how it is, someone explains you rationally how it is. You will possibly think that you understood, and maybe you have understood, but this doesn't mean that you know what it is. In order to know what it is, you need to experience these things. So it is impossible to learn from the outside, except rationally, but rationality is not, in my opinion, consciousness. So in order to know something, you need to learn from the inside. And how are you going to learn from the inside something that you do not know? You need a power that is external to your consciousness, but not external to yourself, to the whole of yourself. And this power, this force, is what the Jungians call the self, that is sort of a ruler, of a manager of the unconscious mind. It encompasses the unconscious mind and consciousness itself. So through the unconscious mind, the self creates dreams that submerge you into a different reality, a reality that you have never experienced before. And because you are inside that reality, you can see what it is firsthand with your own eyes, without the need of someone having to explain that to you. And this can completely shift your reality. So from my perspective, it's when it comes to dreams, it's more important to experience the reality of the dream than to understand what the dream means. Now we are going to use here an example. It's the dream of a woman she is 50 years old, and she is a COO of a company. Can you see the dream in your screen? Please, would you do this just to help me? Okay, so the dream says, suddenly I am in a huge hangar. Inside it, there is a huge space covered with earth. Bulldozers and other machines are around. All of them were part of a ghost city. A woman who seemed to be working in a museum explains that the scene was the exhibition of a place that had been hit by an atomic bomb. She says that there's a word that is covered here behind Zoom, is full of lethal radiation, and we should not touch the earth or the radiation would contaminate us. She continues saying that the radiation would only grow and become even more lethal. They were protecting the area with glass in order to allow people to see the exhibition. So here in this dream, the woman is experiencing radiation. She is experiencing the outcome of an atomic attack, an atomic bomb. She would not be able to experience that outside the dream because she would die. And as a matter of fact, she was accused of being a toxic person in her work environment. And of course, because of the morality of our society, it was advised that she would not be a toxic person. But as you can see in the dream states that inside of her, in her psychological reality, an atomic bomb has exploded and lethal radiation is present. So it's not up to her being or not being a toxic person, because lethal radiation is coming from her unconscious mind. She is going to be a toxic person, and moreover, the radiation is only going to grow and become even more lethal. So her unconscious mind is saying that this is a part of her personality, and in my opinion, she should choose to be radioactive consciously in order to become who she really is. This is a radical perspective, I admit that, because it is way beyond morality, but this is what the unconscious mind does. It presents us with perspectives that would be imponderable, unthinkable, unimaginable for us before. And this, at a later point, this woman had another dream where she arrived in a restaurant. She met her mother-in-law, and she agreed with her mother-in-law to make another atomic bomb attack, now consciously, at a place. I don't know if I am more afraid of the atomic bomb or the mother-in-law making an atomic attack. The fact is that she decided to do that with her mother-in-law. And at that point, she was much more aware of how destructive she was. And by accepting the fact that she was destructive, she could choose how to be destructive in a conscious way, and I would dare to say in a humane way. And after that, she became someone inside the company who was acknowledged for being someone who was difficult to hear, was difficult to listen to, because she would be very assertive in her remarks about you, but she was also acknowledged as a COO that could really help you to become a top performer, because she could really help you to spot the problems that you had in your performance and help you to destroy these things in a very radical way and substitute them for more developed abilities. So everything that appears in dreams, regardless how shocking and how beyond morality they can be developed into something that is interesting for a more advanced consciousness. Now, this shows us that the images present in dreams are not only things that that are explaining things to you about reality. Because you see, this woman was already toxic before she had the dream. So the image of the atomic bomb was already having effects on her life and her behavior and her relationships with other professionals, the environment of the company, who was a very heavy one before she had the dream, and discussed it in her process. And of course, this heaviness made the company work in a quality lower than it could, with results lower than it could, financial results lower than it could. But the image was already there, having its effects over her reality and the reality of many people. When she saw the image in her dream and could finally understand that this was part of her nature, and there wasn't a way to remove this from her, so instead of fighting against it, she started to try to find ways to develop this in a conscious way. Then it started to work in favor of her. But in no stage of this development, the image disappeared. It was always there, always present, before consciousness, during consciousness development, after consciousness was developed. And in all these stages, this image was determining reality, not only explaining things about reality, not only bringing meaning to the reality. It was also doing these things. But more than that, it was causing reality. And this is what makes me state that the images present in dreams are not explanations. They are the causes of reality. Instead of us looking for logical causes, rational causes for reality, we should look for irrational causes for reality, or images that cause reality. And this is so strong that when the image inside a dream changes, reality changes. If you try to change the material reality, you won't be able to do that. So this woman tried to change her reality many times. She tried to stop being toxic. She tried to do coaching, train herself, meditate, and so on and so on and so on for years and years. And she never accomplished changing her reality. When she had the dream with the atomic bomb, particularly after she had worked and the image changed from lethal radiation spreading to something that she was planning with her mother-in-law, how to do it in a conscious way, when the image shifted, the toxicity ceased and she became consciously destructive instead of unconsciously toxic. And then reality changed. So if you try to change material reality, you can't. But if you change the images in your unconscious mind, reality will change. And it will change forever. And it will not require that you keep making an effort to sustain the change after the change has happened. In many other techniques people use, they change, but they have to keep struggling. They have to sustain it. They have to have the power to keep behaving in a different way. They have to focus. If they lose focus, they start to behave in the old ways again. Not when you change the image in a dream. When you do that, reality changes forever. So in the psychological, when you start to experience reality as psychological instead of material reality, you see that the psychological reality determines the material reality. And at this point, the unio mentalis taught by alchemists is in place, has been integrated, and is happening. But when you do this again and again and again and again, when you rotate the cycle many times, doing something that the alchemists used to call 1,000 distillations. I think this is the word. If it is not, please someone correct me. When you have done this 1,000 times, metaphorically speaking, with many topics in your life, with many dreams that you have had, the whole of your reality starts to be psychological. So your professional relationships, your family relationships, your love relationship, your financial life, your health, the way you see reality, your political positions, your economic positions, your spiritual worldview, your worldview in general, starts to be psychological. And when all of this has become psychological, then you start to reach a next level of consciousness development that the alchemists called the coniunctio oppositorum, or the conjunction of all the opposites. This is the direction that we are going now. But before that, we need to realize and admit that there is no distance from what the psychological reality is and the material reality is. So in our previous example, the atomic bomb was expressing itself in toxicity first, and then in conscious destructiveness at a later point, but it was reflecting itself in an exact way. This is very important because, for example, when Jung is analyzing an ancient alchemical document called the Rosarium Philosophorum, he is analyzing 10 images that are symbolically representing consciousness development. And there is one image where the body has died and the soul leaves the body towards the heavens. And then in another image, the soul is returning to the body. This image of the soul returning to the body is very important for us here today, because what it says literally is that the soul, or in Jungian terms, the self, the higher self, is returning to the body. And that means that the psychological reality is becoming one with the physical reality in an exact way. So now let's describe what is this coniunctio oppositorum. But first, let's have a dream here explaining us what it is before we dive into concepts. So this is a dream of a woman, 44, top performer. The dream is, I had sex, but with clothes on, with one of my favorite spiritual teachers, after you, of course, Bentinho Massaro. I don't know if you know this guy. But he was looking and me sitting on his lap, kind of, with him standing up, these paradoxes of dreams, and had an orgasm, felt it for real. So here we have this multi-paradoxical reality where opposites are together. So people are sitting down and standing up at the same time. It's interesting to say that this woman had been abused, sexually abused. So she was hurt in this area of her life. But in this dream, as you can see, she has overcome this wound. And it's interesting to see that the spiritual master is associated with the body. The spiritual master is associated with muscular legs and inferior part of the body. And spirituality is now in conjunction with sexuality, that in our culture is regarded as something that is inferior to spirituality. Not that I agree with that, but it's a cultural conception. So as we can see here, the opposites are in conjunction. And this creates a weird reality. And this is the place where, this is the point of our conversation where we need to open our minds, because things are going to become weird. But I can assure you that my reality is like this. I know that there are people in this room now that can experience reality as the way I am about to show to you. And this can be done. This is a natural stage of consciousness development. So it's on the table for everyone who wants to work. So what is happening here is, again, let's walk through some things that we have already walked through, because it's going to be easier this way. So let's start with the easiest concept of all, projection. So as we have seen, images in our unconscious mind are projected onto other people, and we see them on other people. For example, if I am unaware of my own aggressiveness, I can start to attract people who are aggressive, and I am going to be annoyed by people's aggressiveness. I am going to complain about it. I am going to complain about their behavior and the fact that I keep attracting these people. However, at some point, I am going to acknowledge that there is aggressiveness inside myself. Maybe I submerge in the reality of a dream where I am fighting, or someone important to me is fighting or arguing or attacking someone or using an atomic bomb. And I am going to have to recognize that there is aggressiveness inside of myself, because after all, I have had the dream and there is no escape from that. So at some point, I will acknowledge that there is aggressiveness. And when I do, when I become able to be angry, and I become able to be aggressive and to take decisive action and be assertive, for example, that are some of the developments I can achieve when I see aggressiveness inside myself, I will magically stop to attract an overwhelming amount of people who are aggressive. I may attract one or other aggressive people, but that enormous, disproportional amount of aggressive people in my life are going to disappear. And if this is happening, if something in my psyche is reflecting itself onto other people and deciding who is in my life and who isn't, and causing people to come and go to and from my life, so in the end, I must admit that I am other people and other people are myself. And this is a very disturbing conclusion, because are they behaving the way they're behaving because they want to, because they have free will? Or are they behaving this way because my unconscious mind is causing them to behave this way? And there is no logical answer to that, because a logical answer would need to be either or, and that's not how the unconscious mind works. So the answer from the unconscious mind's perspective, from the backstage of reality, the answer of the fourth dimension of reality is that both are true at the same time. People are behaving that way because they have free will and have decided to do so. And also they are behaving that way because my unconscious mind has determined this reality. So they are me and I am they. And when you start to think this way, other types of conclusions arise. For example, the same thing can be said for situations. If an atomic bomb in my unconscious mind is causing toxicity in my work environment, in myself and other people, of course, this is a situation that is being caused by this image in my unconscious mind. And when I integrate that, the situation changes. If the situation changes because of some change in my unconscious mind, then I need to ask myself, did the situation change because it would change anyway? Or did the situation change because my unconscious mind determined that change? And from the backstage of reality, from the perspective of the fourth dimension or the unconscious mind or even the higher self, the answer is both. So the outer world equals the inner world. And this is another conjunction of opposites. The same thing can be said to my own behavior and my own identity, because sometimes when I integrate something that is inside my unconscious mind, my behavior changes, my identity changes, the way I describe my personality changes. And this can be weird for people who believe that they have a personality, a fixed personality with a fixed set of characteristics that are never going to change. No, they can change. They can change and they can change forever. If you do the Jungian work for decades or even a few years, you are going to become, people won't recognize you anymore. Someone who has seen you like a year before, 2 years before, and meet you again, you will seem a totally different person. Characteristics that were key to your personality are no longer present or are very transformed. So your identity can change completely. And when you keep doing this kind of exercise, 3 other things happen. The first one is that you are progressively becoming more and more conscious of your unconscious. So after some range of time, your consciousness starts to be in conjunction with your unconsciousness. Of course, the unconscious is infinite, eternal. So regardless of how much you expand your consciousness, there will always be an infinite part or portion of the unconscious mind waiting to be integrated into consciousness and become in conjunction with it. But the fact that there is an infinite amount doesn't mean that this portion that you have already managed to work with has entered into conjunction. And if you continue doing this line of thought, then the archetypes, I won't have time to a proper definition of archetypes, so I'm going to use a metaphor here, a very exact one. We could say that the archetypes are the gods and goddesses of the many mythologies around the world. So when you start to work in a Jungian way, you start to integrate these archetypes, these gods and goddesses. And when you do this integration, when you learn with them how to be like them, how to understand the world, how they do understand the world, and how to act in a way that expresses their energy, then these gods start to change. They change their behavior. And this means that the gods are changing their behavior because the unconscious mind has changed its behavior, because your consciousness caused this behavior to change. So ultimately, you are the gods. This is a very weird conception from the perspective of Christianity, for example, but everyone wanting to ask a question? Oh, okay. So from the perspective of Christianity, this could be weird, but you see, Christ has done it. So why couldn't we? And ultimately, the last archetype, that is the self, can also be integrated like any other archetype. And when it is integrated, you become your higher self.
Go down to the other section, 3 dots.
Sorry? Are you speaking, John?
No. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, so you become the self, and then the behavior of the self changes, and then the behavior of God changes. And this is very weird. God changing his, her behavior because you integrated it into your consciousness. But this is exactly what the alchemical symbols are showing. And this is exactly the moment when you do this, you have reached a complete coniunctio oppositorum, you have reached the conjunction of all opposites, and you enter the third and last stage that the alchemists call the unus mundus. And this is the goal of our conversation. And in this part of the presentation, I'm going to use more dreams, more images, because I prefer to see the things happening before my eyes instead of only making theoretical remarks about it. But before that, let's just make a small, let's just have a small thought here. That is, throughout the previous stage, the unconscious mind, you were unconscious of your unconscious mind, obviously. So you did not know what was inside this unconscious mind, what were the contents, how did the gods and goddesses behave. And because you didn't know, you could not make any choices. You could not choose directions. How am I going to choose which direction I'm going to follow, where I am going to go, if I know nothing about any direction? How can I choose? How can I find someone in a city if I don't know their address, their phone number? I need to know something about that person in order to find that person in a big city. The same way, I need to know something in order to find something in my psyche. When you are unconscious of it, you cannot do that. So before you reach coniunctio oppositorum, the self needs to point directions. It needs to say, go here, do that, understand this. And it does that through dreams. It submerges you in the reality of some dream, and this way, it shows you a new reality. So it points directions, and it is able to enforce these directions over you. So if you resist to go these directions, the self is able to force you to go there through attracting people, situations to your life, and through making you lose control over your own behavior in order to experience things. But when you enter the stage called unus mundus, this is no longer true. You have experienced the many archetypes in your psyche. So you don't know everything about everything, because this is impossible. This would be being omniscient, but you know at least something about each one of the archetypes. And this is the place where your journey through the third stage and last stage of the alchemical process starts. In this reality, you already know what is in your psyche. I call this the pneumatic reality, the reality beyond the psychological reality, the pneumatic reality, or the spiritual reality, if you will. And in this reality, since you already know the many directions that you can walk towards in your quote unquote inner world, we're going to see that this does not exist, but just for the purpose of being understood, inside your inner world, you have experienced at least a bit of each one of the directions, so you can now choose. And we are now going to see in the last part of this presentation examples of dreams that show the true nature of this unus mundus reality. So, sorry. Let me share my screen with you again. The first characteristic that we are going to see about this weird reality is that in dreams with 5 dimensions, in dreams that are in the unus mundus stage of the alchemical process, very often you are conscious. Oh, one thing before. All the dreams I'm going to show to you now can be seen in 4 dimensions. All the dreams can be seen as symbolic and can be interpreted within the laws of the coniunctio oppositorum, because deeper realities influence more superficial realities, but they don't cancel these superficial realities. So these dreams happen in multiple levels. Jung even uses this expression in at least one of his books, dreams in multiple levels. This is what we are going to see here. But we are going to focus on the pneumatic aspect of the dreams. And the first characteristic we are going to see is that in this kind of dream, you are very often conscious while dreaming and interpreting the dream while you're dreaming. So you were literally awakened inside the dream. Look at this one. I was with JP and friends. She put her head against me, cheek on cheek, while her hand around my shoulder, not in a friend way, but like a couple do. I said to myself in the middle of the dream that the karma I started to break in the plane, that love is not distance, separation and disconnection, but connection, emotional and physical. That is what spirit wants to experience as human, already started to manifest that fast. Then she drank a glass of wine all in one shot. So in this dream, it's interesting that the person is literally having thoughts about the dream inside the dream. She is already interpreting the dream inside the dream and drawing conclusions out of the dream. And even more interesting is that the glass of wine is a very important symbol of the reality before the coniunctio oppositorum. It is, for example, one of the mysteries in the Christian Mass. Christ is seen as the blood of Christ is very often symbolized as wine, the same way that Dionysus is the god of wine. So the conscious pneumatic reality that exists in unus mundus and is manifesting itself in this conscious dream of my client also influences the next reality, the reality of the coniunctio oppositorum, the previous stage of the alchemical process. And this is symbolizing by her partner drinking a glass of wine in one shot. Now, the next characteristic that we are going to see is that in unus mundus, the dreams show more than one version of reality. So before the unus mundus reality, you either have only the material reality, that is what most people experience, or 2 realities, the material reality and the reality that the unconscious mind is showing you in your dreams. But when you move into the reality of unus mundus, now you have many possible realities at once. So let's look at a few examples. The first example is this small dream here. It is a 70-year-old woman, retired. She dreamed, there is an empty white room. Outside on the wall, there is a control. The dream's rhythm is of 300 sounds. Every 20 minutes, all the trains of the world cross the room. So in this dream, you see that she is in kind of a neutral reality, an empty white room, and all possible trains of the world cross that room, all possible accesses to the world cross that room every 20 minutes. So the psyche, or in more exact terms, the pneumatic reality is giving her access to all possible realities in the world. Now, this here is even more astounding. Look at this. This is a 39 years old woman, a physician. A group of men surrounded the farm. I was on both sides at the same time, inside and outside the surrounded perimeter. Inside, I closed the glass doors with wood and told the people inside to hide and prepare. Outside, I was also out there helping the men to find the best strategy to invade. Look at this. I moved across time and the situation would not be solved. I went further back in time and found a way. I came across a man armed with an unloaded machine gun. A paradox. He shot knowing and not knowing if he would hurt me. Now look at this. I edited the scene of the dream. Inside the dream, the dreamer has power enough to edit the scene of the dream itself. The new scene had a man with a loaded machine gun, but he did not shoot me because we were on the same side. Look at this. Look at this. The woman is in all positions of the dream at the same time. This surely does not often happen in a dream before the coniunctio oppositorum. This looks much more like the action of the self than the action of a human being. And above all, the ability to edit the scene of a dream, this is completely out of a regular interpretation of a dream, because one thing that is usually understood about dreams is that this is real. This is a true thing before the coniunctio oppositorum, is that you cannot influence dreams. Dreams are what they are. They express nature as it is. This was one of the reasons that made Jung have an argument with Freud that led them into separating and not having a relationship anymore, because Freud wanted to say that the ego could influence the dream and change the dream, and Jung would say, no, the ego cannot do that. And Jung is right, in my opinion. And he is right up to the point that the coniunctio oppositorum happens. But after that, it becomes a common thing that the ego can edit the scene of the dream. Let's see if this is a dream of mine. Look at the level of realities that can get together in the dream. I managed to escape the prison and found that there were scenes before. These quotes here, they indicate other scenes. So after some scenes, I managed to escape the prison and found myself at the corner of Wall Street and Broad Street, where I could see the New York Stock Exchange. In front of it, there was a huge portico, Roman style, with a lion carved on it. I ran towards it and crossed it. I found myself on a palace of the Roman Empire 2,000 years ago. Other scenes happen, and then right before I cross back through the portico, I look to my right and see a temple of ancient Egypt, 2 extra 1,000 years before. The people inside were dressed in the style of that time. They were operating cutting-edge technology computers that could edit reality. I arrived at today's New York again. So as you can see, many realities come across, they unite themselves in a multidimensional portico inside New York. And each one of these scenes, I don't have enough time to explain each one of them to you, but each one of them is a completely different reality in which I did things inside the dream that were very meaningful to me and had an impact over my life. There are 2 to go, 2 more characteristics to go. So another characteristic is that In this stage, unus mundus, you make choices inside the dream. You are conscious inside the dream and you make choices. Do I prefer this or that reality? So look at another one of my dreams. I am at Buckingham Palace along with around 100 people and my family, all of us sitting in a big room. A ceremony starts and the royal family starts to come in, dressed in their royal clothes. The children come first, followed by teenagers, the young adults, Prince Charles, and finally Queen Elizabeth. Instead of a human head, she has the chess piece horse made of pure gold on top of her shoulders. Now look at this. She announces that each one of us can choose something, write it down, and she will concede. I think I don't need anything and decide to not write anything down. I am staring at the blank paper, and then the dream ends. As you can see, people who exist in the reality of unus mundus can also be stupid, as I was, having the opportunity of having one of my choices conceded by the queen and doing nothing about it, pretending that I don't need anything, that I am a complete person, which is, of course, stupid. Of course, I did not leave things that way. And when I finally realized I had lost an opportunity, I humbly decided to do a 5D imagination process, bought a ticket plane, went to London. I could not book a visit to Buckingham Palace, of course. So I decided to go to the Westminster Abbey and write a letter on the paper, imagining the paper that the Queen had given me inside the dream and put there my decision, my choice. And this has had huge effect on my life. And lastly, the choices that you make inside the dream determine reality in this unus mundus stage of development. So here are the last dreams I'm going to show to you. This dream here is of a 69 years old public servant, a friend of mine who was at the launching of my book before you arrived here, before this event started. Lisa was talking to me that she was watching the video I have just posted on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Cavalher, of the launching of my book in 2019 in Brazil. So this dream was before the event of launching the book. This woman is a friend of mine. She dreamt Cavalher is launching the Paradigm of Sense at Innova Bra Habitat. This is the name of the venue. And an unus mundus happens. She studied Jungian psychology and the unus mundus, so she knew the expression. The unus mundus happens. The screen behind him, where he would show images during the presentation, is malfunctioning. Suddenly, it becomes the green screen of a chroma key on which anything can be shown. So I don't know if you have seen this thing. It's a green cloth or screen that is behind someone who is recording a movie or a video. So the person records in front of a totally green screen, and then the person who is editing the video or editing the movie can substitute the green screen for any image that the person wants. This is what a chroma key is. And this woman dreamt that behind me there was a chroma key, so the dream suggested that I could insert any image behind the launching of my book, and this image would become real. And the most astounding fact, and there were 20 people, the event had already started, the equipment was malfunctioning, so there were 170 people watching the very moment when the screen behind me went green. It did malfunction exactly as the dream said it would, and it went green. And what did I do? I already had the dream with the Elizabeth the Queen, the one I told you here today, and I was doing because I knew this dream here with the unus mundus had happened, I knew that I would have the opportunity of using the screen behind me to insert an image in the pneumatic reality of my life and everybody that was watching the presentation. So in that presentation, I decided to put a picture of Queen Elizabeth on the screen. This was the use of a psychotechnology. And lastly, look at the dreams of this client here. This is a very small one. I see a TV with a button that adjusts reality. In a second TV, older, small, this button is not working. So in his dream, he could adjust reality. And lastly, the surreal home of Alan Moore. I am a guest. Other people are there too. They're tourists. I want to be a guest of honor. Look at this. Inside the dream, I tell Alan that dreams are the reality, that things of the dreams happen in the material reality. He laughs as someone who knows that and acknowledges me as a wise man. Now look at this. The house is, look at how many realities are in conjunction here. The house is infinitely high, made of stone. It is a cathedral, a castle, a house, meaning a house of common people, and Hogwarts. Employees, so it is religion, secular power, common people, and a magical dimension. Employees transform into Moore and back again. It is a dream about real magic. I feel great in it, happy, comfortable. I sense the dream is getting longer and longer, and I need to register it in order to not forget it. I am happy because I am awakened inside the dream, manipulating it and being manipulated by it freely. I feel safe within the unconsciousness. And this is where I stop speaking and want to hear your opinion. Thank you very much.
Yay, well, I'm going to clap so that you can at least hear some clapping.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, other people are clapping in chat. That's great. Well, my God, thank you. That was very, very, I should look at here, not at my screen. It was very rich. I think, well, I hope people are going to have interesting comments and questions. We already had some comments posted on chat. So I invite people to unmute themselves. And if there is something you'd like to ask Cavalher or share, please do so.
Yes, please feel free to do that. Elena has already written here something. For some reason, I always thought this type of dreams are dreamed in a hypnagogic state. When you, I don't fully know this word, when you are half asleep, this is when it's possible to change and edit dreams and also get stuck. Yes.
Yeah, hypnagogic, I think is when you're waking up in the morning, and hypnopompic is when you're falling asleep at night. I think, I'm not sure. Somebody can correct me on that.
So it's kind of a
the hypnagogic is at night. Yeah, you're half asleep, half awake. You're about to fall asleep, and strange things happen in that interim stage. Unreasonable things happen that you're sort of aware of them.
Great, thank you. Yes, I experienced this too. So I totally validate this. And I see this state as a state where consciousness is in conjunction with the unconscious mind. So I guess it's easier to experience things in this state. Yes.
I have a question about the trajectory and of dreams and the dreamers mostly. I'm thinking that these kind of dreams you're talking about, where you have this self-conscious dreamer, the one that can alter the reality of the dream, I would think that would be something that would occur more likely in somebody who is involved with language and writing books and poetry, that is almost a self-selection for that kind of dream. It really it wouldn't, it seems, and you tell me, less likely to occur out of the blue in somebody who is not involved in literature or this editing or how you can alter words and change reality in real life. And so that would be more likely in this type of person.
I totally agree, because as I said in the beginning, the unus mundus is like a continent, an enormous reality, and the paradigm of sense is a very complex book in that sense, in order to describe this reality. So it's totally beyond our time here today, bringing a thorough worldview on this stage. But one of the aspects of this reality, I call it the force. And the force is another word for inspiration, because you see the root of the word inspiration is the same of the word spirit. So inspiration is when you see images. The whole of our talk is about images. And as I said, it doesn't need to be a visual image. It could be a sound, for example, a music, or it could be a shape, or a text, doesn't matter. But in a broad sense, I would call it an image. So you see an image, and this image inspires you to do art or to create other things. So in a way, artists are somewhat privileged in this dimension, because as the alchemists were, they were continuously drawing things and writing texts out of their imagination in order to express these realities. So I thoroughly agree.
I'll just add that I recall listening to a Freudian analyst, and he was saying that the links in dreams, that he look at a window and think that the next dream next image might be an open door, but he was saying that most dreams follow language, so that instead of seeing an open door, you would follow that word window to where it's going to take you. And that's just another link between language and how you dream and what unfolds in your dream.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do you agree with that?
If I understood it correctly, you were saying that words could also be a link to this reality. Did I get it?
The more important link than the image, the actual pictorial image, that words lead the dream.
Okay. I don't know if I would say that words are more important, but they are certainly a very important image or access to the realities in dreams. Again, There is another part of the paradigm of sense, another chapter called word, because it is said that the spirit expresses itself through words, sounds, and language. If, for example, you see one of the books that inspired the paradigm of sense the most is a book by Jung called The Psychology of Kundalini Yoga, in which he analyzes the Kundalini Yoga system of the chakras. And of course, Jung himself says that most of mankind is at the level of the third chakra, and that his analytical psychology is at the level of the fourth chakra. And when he starts to analyze the fifth chakra, he says that he can't say much about it because it is beyond the integration of the self. And the work I have done and focused on in this unus mundus stage of reality is about the fifth chakra. That is the throat chakra, and the throat is the part of our bodies that emits sounds and mantras. So yes, again, I totally agree with you that words are leading in the dream. In a broad sense, I would also call them images, but I see your point. Let's see, Sasha to everyone. What about lucid dreams and astral projection? Well, for me, all the dreams I described after I started talking about this third stage, the unus mundus, or the fifth dimension, as you prefer, they're all lucid dreams. So all the examples I said here are lucid dreams. And astral projections, I think that this would be a different name for the experience of moving yourself through an image in this pneumatic reality. So, for example, in the dream that I brought here about being in Wall Street and then crossing the portico to Rome and then to the ancient Egypt, this could be easily seen as an astral projection of myself to New York. I was not at the city at the time. I dreamt this, I think I was in Sao Paulo, but for sure not in New York. So it could be seen as I had an astral projection to New York. But as you can see, the astral projection does not only occur in space, it can also occur in time. So in these terms, I would say I could project myself into Rome and then into Egypt and then back to New York. So yes, for me, this is a very common thing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Elena wrote, I have been watching a couple of videos on your YouTube channel. Thank you very much. I am curious, do you edit your videos yourself? No, my daughter does that. She is a professional editor. She edits for companies and TV channels. She edits for a company called Cavalher, who edits for MTV. So she is an editor of MTV, and I have the privilege of being her father and friend. And she is also the professional who edits my videos. Also, I'm curious, why do you choose this type of music and this type of particular cut, where you zoom in three times? Well, the music, it's kind of a dark themes that reflected my psychological environment, but they are about to change because as I progressed in my development, I am less dark today than I was before. This is not exactly right to say. I am even darker than I was before, but I would say that despite my darkness has grown, light has also grown very much, and I don't want to focus on darkness, not because I have a problem with it. On the contrary, I'm very proud of it, but because I already know that, so I am starting to focus on new things. And the Zoom thing is just because I like cinema very much, and I like to use the 3 planes to emphasize ideas that are, the closer I am, the more important the idea is. Why are you deciding to edit your videos that way? I think I have answered that. I also was wondering what type of audience you could attract with these videos. Well, the type of audience is kind of an enigma to me, because I really don't know. I really don't know. I see that organically what happens is that I usually attract very clever people, people with a very high cultural level, a very high educational level, people that are very open-minded and open-hearted, because morality is something that I left behind 22 years ago. So I really speak what I think to be true. Of course, I make many mistakes, as everyone does, but I really attempt to be as authentic and truthful as I can be, and that can be scary. So I see that people need to be open-minded, but I have been finding these people, and I have been having the privilege to live together with them, and be around geniuses. There are a few geniuses in my life, and I am very